You're having a good time on the couch with your friends. You're having a good time in the bed alone. You're having a good time watching TV. Let us ruin your day. Yay!
Welcome to Now It's Ruined, the podcast for people who hate enjoying things. I'm Kate Bridle.
And I'm Larkin Harrington.
I apologize in advance if my voice is a little more weak than usual. I was at Coachella this weekend, and I didn't blow my voice out. I did not blow my voice out or get a sunburn, which is the true miracle is the sunburn.
That's the one. I was shocked and so proud.
But now I get to ruin Coachella for you all because I learned after I got back that a guy who owns a company who has a majority stake in it is a big old conservative who donates a bunch of money to anti-LGBTQ causes and is a mega supporter. And I was like, that's fun to learn after I spent all that money there. I don't think I was going to go again anyway. We were like, well, once in our lives, we'll do it. But it's a bummer. So can't unspend the money, but attempting to spread the word at least. And I'm going to make some donations, try and cleanse my soul. It's just infuriating because it's one of those things that it's I would have had no problem not going. So
right. Yeah.
I wish I'd known before and we just would have been like, nah, never mind. That's all right.
Right. It would have been nice to see Jack White, but meh.
It was nice to see Jack White. I will say I don't have regrets about that particular experience because holy shit, he was amazing. And I also want to shout out Carol G, who was the headliner on Sunday, was incredible. She's a Colombian artist who I had no idea who she was. She was just pouring out just love and Latina pride and was loving on the whole audience. And they were all Hispanic and Latinx and waving their flags from their countries. And my little Latina half was very proud. I almost cried. I was like, this is so beautiful. And she just crushed it on every conceivable front also. The dancing, the singing, the performing, the speaking in between. She was lovely and fantastic. And,
I really need to look into her.
Yeah, she was phenomenal. So, and she did speak out carefully at the end because apparently she was warned that they might revoke her visa and she wouldn't be able to perform on weekend 2 if she said anything too explicit. So we'll see what she says this upcoming weekend and if she uses any stronger language. But Gigi Perez was like, fuck ICE. All right, just the usual stuff. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, Patreon. Subscribe to us on Patreon if you want bonus episodes. Pay us money and maybe we'll do this full time and do more stuff. I don't know. Just we're back to begging. We're back to begging for Patreon. We've returned. We've been brought low. No, we're fine. Just what am I talking about? I don't know. I'm rambling. I didn't write it down this time. I'm just freeballing and this is what happens.
I liked it. I liked it a lot.
Anyway, give us money.
Anyway.
If you want.
Or only if you want.
But we'd like it. Patreon.com/now it's ruined. All right. I don't know. Again, I don't know what's happening today. It's Larkin's turn. She's much better at keeping the topics to herself. I'm always too excited and she's my person that I want to tell everything about when I'm excited. And so I'm like, oh, so I will hand it over and find out along with all of you what terrors await us this time on Now It's Ruined.
Well, 420 is upon us. Which is almost just as appropriate too because you just came back from Coachella, which I'm sure was just a giant haze.
Oh, it was. Yeah.
While my original idea for this episode did involve plants, Kate reminded me of the date and I simply had to shift gears a little bit. I will do that plant episode later, but we must talk about a specific plant, a plant with a very cloudy history rolled up in controversy.
Oh, God damn it.
I hate myself. A plant with literally over 1,000 names. As stated by Time magazine in an article from 2017, there are at least 1,200 names, in fact. What is your favorite term for weed, Kate? Or would you like to just go ahead and list some?
The devil's lettuce. That's one of my preferred.
Nice.
I like that one. Should I name more? I can't name 1,200, certainly.
No, certainly. And I didn't either. I have compiled a list, but it's not exhaustive by any means. And these are just some of the ones that we use here in America. Weed, pot, marijuana, hashish, Mary Jane, Lady Jane, Doña Juanita, Aunt Mary, mota, grass, giggle grass, grifa, devil's lettuce, as you said, green, herb, chronic, cabbage or devil's cabbage, catnip, dope, dank, airplane, amnesia, climb, reefer, roach, good giggles, doobie, spliff, ace, baby, green goddess, alfalfa, asparagus, ganja, dakine, 13, rainy day woman, which I guess is from a Bob Dylan song, sticky icky, which I don't
Oh,
like.
of course.
The
Of course,
sticky
sticky icky.
bleh. Alligator cigarette or wacky tobacco, jazz cigarette, which is my favorite.
Jazz cigarettes. That's also a good one.
I love
Smoke some jazz cigarettes.
Then you have to say it in that voice, yes.
Yeah.
KGB, Kush, and the list just keeps going on and on. But I will delve into some of them specifically, especially some of the weirder ones, just because it was interesting to learn where they came from. Pot is supposed to have come from potación de guaya, meaning drink of grief, since it was originally steeped in wine and was drunk, sometimes shortened to potiguaya. Houdini, I like and is fun, and I know he's one of your favorite history crushes, so
Indeed.
I thought I would include it. It's basically like you're escaping from reality, so Houdini. Dakine is a fun one too. It's a Hawaiian pidgin surfer slang for the kind, meaning like the thing or the whatchamacallit, a filler for something you can't remember, but it's also has the connotation of being cool, you know. The current slang popular with the kids, hello fellow kids,
Hello, children.
appears to be Zaza, which comes from exotic and was born from Atlanta's rap scene. And I know the youths are going to come for me and tell me how stupid and wrong I am. And we'll probably stop using it because I have now uttered it. But
Yes.
that's just the way of things. With every new generation, there is new slang. And we all know that if the adults or authorities start to catch on, it's time to stop using it and come up with something new, especially with slang used for clandestine activities or substances. And this is precisely why cannabis has so many names, not only because of the need for coded language, but also because it's fun. But this never-ending list of slang terms wasn't simply born for the fun of it. The illicit nature of cannabis and the controversy surrounding it since we started using it is really what necessitated and birthed this absurd breadth of terminology. Another term of note is muggle, which I had never heard and was like, excuse me?
Excuse me, J.K. Rowling.
Excuse me? And that's what I thought. We don't know where it came from, but it showed up in the 1920s and referred to people who smoked weed who were called muggleheads. And no, J.K. Trader Rowling did not get the name for non-wizarding people from this term. Apparently, the non-wizarding interpretation came from the word mug, meaning a person or a face, you know, like your mug.
Yeah, your mug. Yeah.
But that was also derived later as a dim-witted or just kind of foolish person. Like, he's a real mug. And that's what that person said that they took.
That person. She who shall not be named.
That person doesn't like pronouns, so they don't get any.
That's true. Fuck that bitch. We don't have time for me to.
There simply
us
isn't
to go
time.
on a
No,
J.K.
I need
Rowling
to-
rant right now.
Muggle has nothing to do with non-wizards. Referring to weed as Nixon is a good one because it's used for shitty weed that's sold as good weed. So that's appropriate. Then there is 13 because M is the 13th letter of the alphabet. M for
marijuana.
Yeah, which leads back to maybe the most controversial term for cannabis, which is marijuana. The origin of the actual word marijuana appears to be unknown. While it was thought that it was the combination of Mari or Maria and Juana, the contraction of a name, which is what I always believed, there is no evidence to support this really at all. In fact, the original spellings found in Spanish text or newspapers were either marijuana with a G or marijuana with an H. There is reference to the plant being called Rosa Maria by the native Tepehuan of the Mexican highlands. Rosa Maria, the sacred rose, was sometimes smoked by the Tepehuan as a stand-in for peyote. This could be one of the reasons why we make linkages from the word Maria to the name Maria and an assumption of a family name turned portmanteau. Since the cannabis plant is not native to Mexico, the term marijuana was more than likely born of foreign influence, not a Spanish word originally. The word itself is more in reference to the way in which the plant was being consumed in order to get the drug effect. Before, it was being used as an intoxicating drug in Mexico. In other parts of the world, what became most commonly referred to as hashish was put directly in the mouth or smoked in a pipe. The peasant folk of Mexico were utilizing a newer method of smoking in the form of a rolled cigarette. Yeah. And the word marijuana really is the word for this method, not necessarily the plant itself.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. But how did it get to Mexico in the first place? And why did people start smoking it? And why is the word marijuana controversial? I will try to make a very long and very complex story as short as possible. But first, Colin blanks.
Oh,
Go.
shit. Oh, about weed? I already got one. I got 3. No, I got 2. Well, there is what he said about the fact that people who are locked up for drug crimes should be released. And
Snaps.
then we can
Yes.
move on with the conversation, which I mentioned on my road signs episode. But he also, when he was on Conan's podcast, was talking about how initially he knew he wanted to be an actor, but because his dad was Tom Hanks, he was like, I can't do it. Like, I can't just be that kid.
This. Yeah.
And so he was like, I'll rebel. And he was like, my rebellion was like, go to college and just like smoke weed on my couch all day. And, that, and try and maybe be like a musician or whatever.
Yeah.
But like I can't act because then everyone expects it because of my dad. And eventually he figured out that, that's what he wanted to do. And so that's what he did.
Well, there you go. Then I have 2 for you. Maybe you don't know.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Hank's kerchiefs, they started selling them in specific cannabis stores.
Yes,
And
that's
then-
right. He partnered with a guy who was like a buddy of his who had dispensaries. Yeah.
Yeah. And they were like, what a partnership. Yay.
Yeah.
Because he thought his designs on his Hank's kerchiefs were so pretty. And he was like, thanks, stop, sell them. Which is how I imagine the conversation went. He was also...
That was exactly what it is.
That's exactly... In the movie High School, which came out in 2010. And it's like, he's not the main character. He's one of the friends, I believe. I didn't delve into it. Maybe you and I should watch it.
Yeah.
But
I
it's
don't
like
even know about this one.
No, I have no idea. There's like a kid who gets caught with weed and like has to, like, I guess all of his high school buddies, like, there's an adventure of some sort. I don't really know. Or they're just up against the man, and it's a coming of age story.
School.
High school. I
I think that was worth a solid $1. That was a lot of
think that was a lot of Colin Hanks facts. That's at least worth $1, I think.
The bottom of the jar is almost covered.
Hey, look at that. Look at that.
Hey, there he is.
We'll solve all the world's problems yet. And then I'll do some sort of magical ceremony and then...
We'll conjure him.
Yes. Okay. Good job, Colin Hanks.
Yes.
Colin Blanks.
Yay.
Our first Colin Blanks.
That was a pretty easy one. I'm nervous that at some point I'm going to be like, oh, God.
I know, right? I was like, let's start... I'll
Ease
toss
me
her a
in.
softball. Yeah. We have been using the cannabis plant since as far back as the Neolithic.
Oh, shit.
I know. We grew it for its protein-rich seeds that also produced oil and for highly versatile fibers. The cannabis plant thrives in what are called steppe environments, open, treeless, and arid. The genus itself is believed to have emerged in the mid-Oligocene epoch around 28 million years ago on the Tibetan Plateau. Around 35 million years ago, the landmass that we know as India smashed into Asia, creating the steppe environment perfect for the cannabis plant to flourish. From there, it spread to the east and the west. This is when it split off from the genus Humulus, the genus that we have to thank for hops. But we weren't necessarily using the plant to get high at this early stage. We can't find any living examples of the original wild variety, and tracking its origins and evolution has been difficult, as only 2 fossil prints have ever been found. We have been able to track domesticated versions that have made it back into the wild. However, they are not truly wild species, but feral, like house cats that have made it back into the wild, which is actually where it got the moniker weed, since it is so good at making its way back into wild spaces and proliferating.
Oh.
But we won't go on the tangent that I desperately want to go on about how the word weed is not fair and the connotations of a plant being a weed and why. But that's for another episode.
Yep, we got it. We got that one set aside already.
The history of the evolution and the domestication of the cannabis plant is incredibly muddled and hard to track. This is not just due to how far back our history of propagating it goes, but because of the underground nature of that propagation that became necessary over time. You're not going to write a tell-all about the best ways to grow your new strain of an historically taboo or illegal substance. So it's been almost impossible to unravel the history of domestication and use of cannabis and nail down a precise timeline or path. However, a study released in 2021 compared the genomes of 110 different plants around the world, including feral samples and lineages, both used for hemp and textile use and as a drug. Through this resequencing, they were able to track domesticated lineages all the way back to the Neolithic around 12,000 years ago in a region of what is now China, making cannabis literally one of the very first plants domesticated by humans. It is likely that these were multi-purpose crops. I mean, why not? You have a one-stop shop for your oils, seeds, and hemp, with the added fun bonus of happy drugs. But realistically, that fun benefit of the plant was most likely tied to ceremonial activities as well as medicinal, but not recreational. The hemp and drug lineages didn't diverge from each other until around 4,000 years ago, indicating that this is when plants were actually being bred for two distinct purposes. We also have written evidence of this from around the same time period, thanks to Chinese Emperor Shen Nung. I've actually talked about him before in my gynecology episode, but his legacy is almost mythical. He has long been revered as the Chinese father of medicine, always more fathers of things, also credited for the institution of agriculture in China. His famous pharmacopoeia, the Shen Nung Pen Cao Qing, was the first of its kind in China. This 2,000-year-old text contained descriptions and prescribed uses of cannabis as a safe and effective treatment for various ailments, mostly dealing with pain, ranging from GI problems to asthma to arthritis and even to gynecological disorders. References to its mind-altering properties are limited, but he does say that using too much of it will make you see demons. So,
Oh. Have you ever gotten so high you hallucinated on weed? Obviously, I mean.
I think so, but I was mostly more concerned that I was dying. So.
That is the primary concern when you get too high.
Yeah.
I don't think I have. I think I've had auditory shit like that.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know if I've had hallucinations, but auditory stuff gets very weird for me if I'm too high. I can't tell which direction anything is coming from. When was the first time you smoked the wacky weed?
I was in my first year of high school, and my best friend's best friend that I supplanted.
Usurped.
I usurped her, but it wasn't. She didn't really have that much. I basically smoked resin the first time.
Oh.
Yeah, and it was not pretty.
Were you okay?
No.
Oh.
No.
Was that when you saw demons?
Yeah. Because I mean, it was later mixed with alcohol at the same night.
Ooh,
and
yeah.
It was just a bad.
Oof.
The toilet turned into 5 toilets. I'll tell you that much.
Wow, that's not too many toilets.
Too many cooks.
I was a total square. Like, Dare worked on me. Gateway drug, ruin your life. All of that stupid bullshit. I didn't really judge anyone who was doing it, but I was just like, I don't want to lose control of my faculties. I think was my concern. I was like, I don't want to get addicted to anything. I don't want it to lead to anything else, blah, 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 blah. And then once I was out of high school, I loosened the fuck up a little bit. And I came back home, and two of my friends who I felt very safe with, like two of my girlfriends from high school, I was like, okay, I'll smoke with you guys. And so we just went out in my hometown, my tiny Minnesota town. We parked my friend's car, and I watched my friend struggle to roll a joint for like 20 minutes. She was getting so fucking mad and so frustrated, but finally we got it and we smoked. At first I didn't feel anything, and then I started I wasn't hallucinating, but I started having visions of donuts and cookies and M&M cookies. I was like, this is what I need right now. And then we went to the grocery store that was in our little town, and we bought some snacks, and we just hung out in the parking lot. It was fun. It was a good time.
Oh, yeah. That's a better memory than mine.
Yeah. I didn't mix it with anything else.
Yeah. My experience with weed has been pretty rocky, I'll say. I don't think we're friends.
Yeah. That's fair. Yeah. I'm friends with it now. Still, sometimes we're not friends.
But you still have a much better grasp of how it
I know what
will
I
affect
like
you.
generally, but sometimes it sneaks up on you, in a strain that you think has been fine before, interacts in a weird way. I don't know.
Well, in a podcast I just listened to, She has a scientist on to talk about that and how
Oh.
the specific strains that you are using are actually pretty misleading because the plant itself that, and I'm going to butcher this, you can have a specific strain of a plant, but depending on its growth conditions, like how much water it got, how much sun it got, how much humidity there was, is going to alter the chemicals that you are getting from that plant.
Oh.
So even if you go to your local dispensary and you're like, I want that specific strain, they'll give it to you, but you could also be just getting different effects because the plant was grown differently. I have experienced so many different levels of high from the same exact brand of the same exact THC dose of the same gummy.
That's interesting because I do feel like edibles and gummies in particular are a little more consistent for me, at least. But
Yeah.
it probably also depends on the brand. I mean, who knows? Yeah. But that's really interesting that the plant, it makes sense. It's like wine,
It makes a lot of sense.
you know, it
Yes.
tastes completely different depending on what weather it had and what year it was and like what soil it was in and whatever. Yeah. Like the terroir.
And if you want a much better understanding and description of that, dear listeners, hop on over to the podcast Ologies with Allie Ward. She's awesome. She just came out with an episode on cannabis. It was perfect. I got in my car the other day and I was like, I wonder if Allie came out with anything. And it was like that day she had released a cannabis. I was like, oh, it's perfect.
She blessed you.
She did. It was this general belief that like, if you smoke too much, you're going to see other beings. It was this belief that indicates that use of cannabis outside of medicinal application was reserved for shamans whose job it was to talk to spirits and demons. In fact, the first substantial archaeological evidence of drug-type cannabis being used, dated 2,500 years ago, was found in an ancient cemetery in Western China and in very much a ritualistic setting. The ancient Indian holy text, the Atharva Veda, describes ritualistic use of bhang, or bhanga, the Sanskrit term for cannabis. It was also used medicinally to treat pain and anxiety, as an anesthetic and as an appetite stimulant, and even to treat convulsions. The many medicinal uses of cannabis were attributed to being able to commune with and appease the gods. There are ancient Assyrian, Greek, and Roman texts that describe such therapeutic and ritualistic properties. The use of cannabis both medicinally and as a psychoactive drug spread to northern regions of Africa by the 13th century and made it to Latin America by the 16th, thanks to, I imagine you can guess, the slave trade. Which is how it first made it to North America.
Of course. Everything great can be traced back to the fucking slave trade. Do you like it? Too bad.
Too bad, bitch.
Slavery is
Grow
the
up.
reason that you have it. Grow up.
But why does cannabis work like medicine, and why do we like it so much? First of all, cannabis is a very weirdly complex plant with over 400 molecules doing complex shit. Some of these chemicals help protect the plant against disease. Others protect it from UV rays, basically its own little plant sunscreen. Others deter pests or things that might want to eat it. And some of these chemicals, called cannabinoids, happen to fit perfectly into specific receptors in our brains, most notably tetrahydrocannabinol, or THC, one of at least 100 cannabinoids produced by the plant. This ancient system of receptors in our brains, called the endocannabinoid system, produces important regulating molecules called endocannabinoids, and it's been around for millions of years. And we're not the only ones who have it. Everyone else has got one, from nematodes to narwhals.
Oh. See, this is kind of shit that when you're high, you're like, I mean, how do you not believe in God? Like,
Exactly.
He gave us weed and he gave us receptors in our brains to like we're meant to smoke weed, man.
We're meant to smoke it. And why not? Yeah, why not believe that? Because the little sea urchins have an endocannabinoid system, and it's been around for 600 million years. What's going on? These endocannabinoids are responsible for regulating many different necessary bodily functions, like metabolism, sleep, memory, and many other aspects of development. The cannabinoids produced by the cannabis plant are called phytocannabinoids, of which THC is included, and which mimic our own endocannabinoids and bind to our receptors, making us feel all the weird, fun feelings that weed makes us feel, and offering relief for a variety of health issues. Which is wild, as you just said, given the millions of years that this endocannabinoid system has been around, relative to the more recent evolution of a plant that happens to be able to mimic these chemicals so perfectly and sync up with our little puzzle piece receptors. Nature be crazy.
So it's bringing me back to the gin and tonics episode where you're like,
Mhm.
what are the fucking odds that
Right?
like
I thought the same thing.
malaria is a disease that's existing in these other continents that are way over here, and the one cure for it is this one tree that's growing over here in this other continent, and we found it.
Why?
Fuck.
Why and how? We have been carefully selecting for and refining this magical effect on our systems for thousands of years, and mostly in secret. What began as an accepted medicine and a form of recreation that was widespread and enjoyed freely came to be demonized and censured. By the early 1800s, wild cannabis was growing everywhere in Mexico and being used recreationally. It started growing wild there, likely as offshoots from abandoned hemp crops that were planted in the 1500s, as decreed by the Spanish because it was such a durable and prolific source of fiber for sails and rope and other textiles necessary for, conquering people. We were already growing lots of hemp here too. It was a very important crop that I didn't think about or realize. George Washington had plots of it. It aided in our independence by providing easy production of clothing, paper, oil. The list goes on. The original draft of our declaration was written on hemp paper.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, baby. So it was everywhere and really important to us, but we weren't smoking it.
We being Americans, you mean like
Yes.
Washington and Jefferson weren't getting
They
high
had
off
no
their
clue.
supply.
They had no clue.
They didn't know?
They didn't know. They didn't even know that those were the possible effects. And I mean, these original hemp plants would have had very, very low THC
Right.
in them anyways. But in 1800s Mexico, they knew the poor working class people were smoking weed, and also the military, because they are also made up of the poor working class, and
Right.
they're smoking a lot of weed. Which makes sense. Soldiers need a vice, and it was much easier to find and less expensive than alcohol. Fast forward to 1910, and the famous guerrilla army of the Mexican Revolution, led by Pancho Villa, an army of day laborers and native people who were well remembered for their pot smoking. They smoked while they marched, and then again to celebrate successes. They were just always smoking. But hey, if I was in the military, so would I. But I originally amended that thought and was like, well, that can't be good for, I don't know, fighting.
Situational awareness.
Right? But they were actually really well known for how tough and formidable they were.
Sometimes I'm like, I feel more tuned in. Like, it depends on the amount. But sometimes I'm like, I remember more of like a TV show I'm watching because I'm like just zoned in and focused. Like it focuses my attention.
I've never felt that.
Sometimes it focuses too much and then you're like, I don't remember that anything else around me is happening.
I guess that's
like
true.
you get lost in something.
That's what I mean. Yeah. And you lose time and you're like, this is the only thing that's happening on the planet right now.
Right. I know people who used to get like high and weight tables and I was like, how? I couldn't.
No, I've known people like that.
Like, I get it with a more menial job, but even so, I would just be like, nah, I can't be trusted to do.
No way. Let alone shoot people or at people.
Yeah. You get a Faramir moment. That's what you get. And that you get all quiet on the Western Front. You wonder what his name was.
Absolutely not. But they were well known for being good fighters. And we can thank their perseverance, both as soldiers and as stoners, for the song that we all know and love, La Cucaracha.
Oh.
Yeah.
Love.
The chorus of which we all know goes, La cucaracha, ya no puede caminar, porque no tiene marihuana que fumar. Basically, thank you. No, you were just clapping in time.
I mean, both.
But basically, it's poor little cockroach. He can't walk anymore because he doesn't have any weed to smoke.
I never knew that. That's
I didn't
amazing.
either. And it's just basically talking about a sad little cockroach, a soldier, just bumbling around because he doesn't have any weed.
Is that where roach comes from?
Exactly what I was about to say.
Oh, sorry.
But the social perception of marijuana certainly changed over time. It came to be seen as a drug for the poor, the working class, the underbelly of society, And from that perspective, it's easy enough to change the narrative to one of poor people just making things worse for themselves. And this was exacerbated by the culmination of the Mexican Revolution in 1920, which caused a sharp increase of Mexican citizens immigrating to the southern United States. And with it came, you guessed it, a bunch of prejudice and scared white people worried about all these new brown people looking for a safe place to live. And a great way to stoke the fear flames was to demonize the recreational use of marijuana, which was brought along with the new wave of immigration and becoming quite popular, especially with U.S. soldiers at the border, who became real big fans.
They were like, this is great.
This is good. I like this. Newspapers and politicians warned citizens of the new and super dangerous loco weed. It was foreign, alien, unknown, and a successful campaign of fear-mongering with very clear parallels to the very people associated with this new drug that was intruding on American lives and values. Prior to these new social changes, weed had mostly been referred to as cannabis throughout Europe, North America, and scientific circles. Now, in the US, it was marijuana, the marijuana menace. The hostility and fear directed at this dangerous new drug was easily redirected with equal fervor towards Mexican people. And what better way to keep these new members of society constrained, under control, and fearful than to create new legislation and prohibition of the demon herb they brought with them? The very first of such new legislation was enacted in El Paso, Texas in 1914, which prohibited the possession or sale of cannabis. Police insisted that this killer weed made people violent, caused a quote-unquote lust for blood. I've got the bloodlust.
Perry?
So it causes a lust for blood as well as superhuman strength. And the Mexican immigrants were handing it out to unsuspecting school children, Kate.
Oh, of course. I guess if you had asked me, like, when did fervor about weed start, I would have thought it was more like in the 50s, like reefer madness
Exactly.
days. I didn't realize it was that early. That's interesting. And that it's so specific. And I don't mean to preempt you again, and I'm sure you'll get into this, but that like here in the US, that's where the kind of fervor came from, was like the Mexican immigration. So I'm curious why like that spread elsewhere when because now actually so many other places are more restrictive. Like there are a lot of places in Europe that I'm surprised it's still just completely illegal across the board, like chill places that I'm like, interesting.
Yeah, and that is true. And I think we were the ones who started that trend. So what became known as the marijuana menace was associated with being a deviant, i.e. a vagrant, musician, insinuation being a jazz musician, meaning black.
Oh, right.
Right.
I was like, not a musician.
Oh! Sex worker, or a Hindu even. In 1911, a member of California's State Board of Pharmacy, whose name was Henry J. Finger.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Wrote in a letter, quote, "Within the last year, we in California have been getting a large influx of Hindus," spelled with 2 O's, "and they have in turn started quite a demand for cannabis indica. They are a very undesirable lot, and the habit is growing in California very fast. The fear is now that it is not being confined to the Hindus alone, but that they are initiating our whites into this habit."
Oh, no, not the whites.
Not the whites. No.
Hindus with 2 O's also. Oh,
I read that and was like,
finger.
Hey, shut up, Finger.
Does he look like a finger?
I bet he looks like a thumb.
Like a ball of fingers.
Ew! I'm so sick of this playbook, too. Like, we're so annoying. It makes me want to puke.
Just marginalizing people and being like,
Yeah.
Don't do it to the white people. If you're going to do it to yourselves and be vagrants, fine.
Along with the new anti-marijuana campaigns, legislation around houselessness and segregation of housing, of establishments, and even public spaces followed. In his book, Smoke Signals, A Social History of Marijuana, Medical, Recreational, and Scientific, which I use extensively for the research in this episode, Martin A. Lee refers to this cascade of new systemic controls described by historians as being successfully and intentionally established as a means of policing Mexicans, which is the playbook I'm over. By the time the Great Depression hit and unemployment was at an all-time high, resentment towards Mexican Americans was only getting worse, and with it, an increasing frenzy over the threat of that evil drug, marijuana. What is very interesting to me is that at the same time marijuana was making its debut in the southwestern United States, it was getting shut down in Mexico People were getting freaked out by what it could do, and its prohibition in Mexico started in 1920, years before our own federal crackdown. Ours didn't come until 1937 in the shape of the Marijuana Tax Act, which implemented an extremely prohibitive tax on cannabis and effectively criminalized it. And we can thank Harry Anslinger for making it happen. Add him to the list.
Okay.
Immediately. He was the narcotics commissioner of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics and is described by author Martin A. Lee as the godfather of America's war on drugs. So
Gross.
we love that. He testified before Congress in hearings that eventually led to the 1937 Tax Act. I read some of the transcript and woof. I couldn't get through all of it. It's absurd and all over the place. And of course, full to bursting with racist and xenophobic sentiment. He goes back and forth about how Indian hemp is the same as marijuana, but then later says it's not the same. Indian hemp was dangerously misclassified as an addictive narcotic. This is an excerpt from the letter he used in his testimony from some newspaper editor named Floyd Baskett. Okay, so...
What a finger and basket.
Finger, basket. Who are these people? God, they're made up. That's what it is. I make it up. I make it up.
I make it up. Peasant soup people.
That's what they are. They're peasant soup people. God damn it. Baskett was a distinguished journalist or whatever, but it reads, quote, I wish I could show you what a small marijuana cigarette can do to one of our degenerate Spanish-speaking residents.
Oh.
That's why our problem is so great. The greatest percentage of our population is composed of Spanish-speaking persons, most of who are low mentally because of social and racial conditions. End quote.
Ew. 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 Ew.
What? Yeah.
What are you talking about?
What are you talking about?
It's the stupid, lazy whole fucking narrative.
That's smear campaign upon smear campaign had led up to this federal power move, mostly obscenely and unabashedly racist, as you can imagine, and very anti-foreigner, particularly anti-Mexican. While the 1937 Tax Act was the beginning of the real crackdown, the U.S. government had been incrementally enforcing regulations on drugs for a while. The Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906 put firm restrictions on what the government considered safe to put in our bodies, either as food or as medicine. Up until that point, there had been little to no restrictions on psychoactive drug use in North America. Really, nothing was illegal yet. The first legal distinction made between the use of a drug medicinally or recreationally came with the Harrison Act of 1914. But they weren't really concerned about weed yet. It wasn't that widespread yet, mostly considered a drug of the marginalized, dispossessed, minorities, and aliens. So who cares?
Again, what we said, as long as you're keeping it among yourselves.
Yeah, keep it to yourself. And
we don't give a shit if you all are having problems.
That's par for the course. You guys are degenerates. Yeah.
Right. And it's like less sinister, I guess, with weed than like with something like crack or like heroin, where they're like, well, as long as only those people are using it and dying from it, then great.
But people were just as scared of it eventually. And it's because this narc of narcs, narc of all narcs, Anslinger, he's really up there on the list. I need a whiteboard right here. He's going at the top.
Some faithful fan, please go back and compile us a list of everyone we've said we want to fight in a Denny's parking lot in hell. Please. We would love those.
And Will, it's not you. You've got too much on your plate right now, Will.
That's right. Will's making a movie.
Narc of all narcs, Anslinger, had his power play epiphany. His precious bureau was floundering in the wake of the Great Depression and was in danger of getting axed. And the marijuana menace provided the perfect platform with which he could save his department and himself. Time to create a real problem for the American people to panic about. With the help of his friend and fellow racist xenophobe, William Randolph Hearst, Anslinger worked these fear campaigns into hysteria. He is quoted as saying, quote, if the hideous monster Frankenstein came face to face with the hideous monster marijuana, he would drop dead of fright.
Oh my God.
The drama.
I normally wouldn't be that guy, but to this fucker, I will be. Frankenstein's not the monster, you stupid piece of shit.
You idiot. Uncultured swine.
Swine. You read a book.
Read a woman's book.
Yeah, seriously. That's right. Like, read something other than the newspapers put out by William Randolph Hearst, you fuck.
His good friend Hearst, owner of a media empire, was as obsessed with the issue of killer weed and used his power and influence accordingly. He was also a fan of Mussolini and even included Nazi columns in his papers The Nazis were already spearheading their own campaign for a war on drugs, so Hearst was naturally a fan.
I just don't know what I thought was going to come out of your face, but a fan of Mussolini was not. Out of your face, also.
No, I like
that mouth.
And apparently unabashed about it, which is,
And we're back there now, right? Like, it's
right.
Not...
Yeah. Yeah, we're right. I act surprised. I'm surprised every time. And then you look
Oh my God. And Bud, of course.
Oh my God. The reality you live in, Larkin. Anslinger and Hearst's anti-marijuana crusade also served to instill in white women who had just earned the right to vote
Great.
that they still needed men to protect them from the degenerate races. Can't pass up a good opportunity to keep the pesky white woman in line while you're at it.
Yeah. They're like, too much power getting over there. We gotta
hey.
give these bitches something to be scared of.
Remind them real quick.
Yeah.
Anslinger was also involved in and promoted anti-marijuana propaganda films, which gave rise to the infamous Reefer Madness, originally called Tell Your Children in 1936.
Oh, Reefer Madness is a way better title.
Yeah. Tell Your Children?
Tell your children what? Like, that tells me nothing. Reefer Madness, all you need to know right there. I want to watch that movie.
Right. If you haven't seen it, go give it a watch. It begins with a manifesto. Real quick, I'm just going to read it through for you guys. The motion picture you are about to witness may startle you. It would not have been possible otherwise to sufficiently emphasize the frightful toll of the new drug menace, which is destroying the youth of America in alarmingly increasing numbers. Marijuana is that drug. A violent narcotic, an unspeakable scourge, the real public enemy number one. Its first effect is sudden, violent, uncontrollable laughter. Then comes dangerous hallucinations. Space expands. Time slows down, almost stands still. Fixed ideas come next, conjuring up monstrous extravagances, followed by emotional disturbances, the total inability to direct thoughts, the loss of all power to resist physical emotions, leading finally to acts of shocking violence, ending often in incurable insanity. In picturing its soul-destroying effects, no attempt was made to equivocate. The scenes and incidents, while fictionalized for the purpose of this story, are based upon actual research into the results of marijuana addiction. If their stark reality will make you think, will make you aware that something must be done to wipe out this ghastly menace, then this picture will not have failed in its purpose, because the dread marijuana may be reaching forth next for your son or daughter, or yours, or yours.
Wow. The dread marijuana.
The dread marijuana. It was a total flop, though.
Initially, everything they list were like, that sounds kind of fucking rad. Like,
yeah, you're like,
the
what?
stuff that they get accurate about marijuana, actually, you're like,
yeah. You're like, what's wrong with...
I'm trying to be mad at it, but I can't be mad at it. It makes me think of in Dewey Cox when he catches Tim Meadows like smoking weed in the bathroom, and he's like, what's that? And he's like, it's weed. You don't want, get out of here. You don't want none of this shit. And he's like, why is it gonna make me upset? And he's like, no, it'll calm you down. And he's like, well, I don't want it to make me want to have a bunch of sex. And it's like, it makes sex even better. And he's like, well, I don't want it to. I don't want to get addicted. And he's like, it's not habit forming. And then he's like, get out of here. You don't want it. And he's like, I think I kind of want it.
I kind of want it, actually.
It sounds expensive. It's the cheapest drug there is.
It was a total flop. Everyone saw it for what it was. They were like, what the hell is this? Now it's a fun cult classic. But Anslinger was really unable to come up with any major drug rings or dealers or proof of any of his assertions that cannabis turned people into violent psychopaths. And since he had exhausted his crusade against doctors, throwing them in prison for prescribing cannabis, he needed a new target. And he found it in the jazz scene. In 1943, he told his agents specifically to bring him information on, quote, musicians of the swing band variety. Which...
Not swing musicians. Musicians of the swing band variety. Listen, when I write, I often use 5 words when I could use 1, and then I go back and I correct myself. But that's musicians of the swing band variety.
But wait till you hear the title of his special secret file. He even had a special file at the FBN titled Marijuana and Musicians, in which he compiled the names of pretty much every famous jazz musician of the time and possibly incriminating info on them. It included Duke Ellington, Billie Holiday, Jimmy Dorsey, Thelonious Monk, and a whole dossier on Louis Armstrong.
Oh, Louis. Not Louis. Come
I
on.
know. He loved weed. He sang
The
about it.
marijuana. The trees of green had a different meaning than just nature loving.
This federal act of 1937 also meant an abrupt halt on medical research involving cannabis, which had been building steam. As I have mentioned, we have known about the medicinal effects of cannabis for thousands of years, even as an effective treatment for seizures. But the first scientific studies of these effects didn't appear until 1833 in the work of William Brooke O'Shaughnessy. An Irish chemist and physician, O'Shaughnessy experimented with the effects of cannabis in India, bringing his findings to Europe. His research confirmed what we'd known forever, that cannabis was an effective treatment for pain and maybe the most effective treatment for seizures.
I don't know that I knew that about seizures. That's
Yeah.
really interesting.
As we now know, the cannabinoid responsible for these effects is the phytocannabinoid cannabidiol, or CBD. While THC binds to the receptors found in our brain, CB1 receptors, and causes those mind-altering effects, CBD binds to our other cannabinoid receptor, CB2, which is found mostly in our immune tissues and doesn't have any psychoactive effect on its own. That was extremely oversimplified. By the way, it's insanely complex and I simply do not have the time to dive into it, but it is fascinating and there will be links in the notes. O'Shaughnessy's contemporary, Darwin, asked the
Erasmus
question.
or Charles?
This time it's Erasmus.
What? Really?
Yes! I know, for once it's Erasmus. He was, alongside O'Shaughnessy, experimenting with cannabis breeding.
Oh, right, because he was a geneticist, right? Like
Mhm.
that's why the context that I learned about him, I think.
And like a
in
poet and a
college.
writer and he was all sorts of crazy things.
Erasmus.
At around the same time, O'Shaughnessy was studying the anti-inflammatory effects of cannabis. Jacques-Joseph Moreau, a French psychiatrist, was studying its psychoactive properties in Southwest Asia and Northern Africa. He hoped to apply its effects to the study of mental illness. Its use as a psychotropic spread throughout Europe and became especially popular with the artists. Most notably in Paris, where Moreau dispensed hashish happily to those eagerly lining up to try it. Even such illustrious figures as Victor Hugo and Alexandre Dumas, they actually made their own little club, Le Club des Hachachons, meaning the Hashish Eaters Club.
Nice. I love it.
Indian hemp was included in the U.S. pharmacopoeia by 1854. It was used in tinctures, oils, and poultices to treat a wide array of physical ailments: headaches, menstrual cramps, depression, insomnia, just to name a few. But by the end of the 30s, new medicines were on the scene. And by that I mean the 1930s, and I apologize. Aspirin and barbiturates quickly took the place of medicinal use of cannabis, aided and abetted by the new legislation. Now it was too expensive and bothersome to invest in any real research. By 1941, it had been removed from the U.S. pharmacopoeia. Come 1960, J. Edgar Hoover loudly denounces the use of marijuana, extolling that the three biggest threats to America are the communists, the beatniks, and the eggheads.
The eggheads.
I
What's
know,
wrong
and
with
everyone knew that the beatnik counterculture was synonymous with smoking weed. But in 1962, JFK fires Anslinger.
JFK was on a fuck ton of drugs, so that doesn't shock
So,
me.
yeah, Anslinger's whole department was a mess of corrupt assholes, and Kennedy was sick of the whole thing and sick of Anslinger's big, scary cop routine and his apparent disregard for people's constitutional rights. Kennedy didn't have the same sense of urgency about the marijuana problem and opened the stage for more discourse about it. More white people started smoking and getting arrested for it, for the first time ever outnumbering minority arrests. With a more relaxed atmosphere, more Americans were trying pot, and once they did and saw that they didn't explode or become murdering psychos, it seemed that a lot of them began to question whether they could trust the government at all about anything. But of course, this happy time couldn't last. Here comes Tricky Dick and his war on drugs. In 1969, Nixon began his war under the guise of a groundbreaking bust of drug smuggling from Mexico called Operation Intercept. And I say guys because the true intent behind it was simply to put pressure on Mexico to put more prohibitions on their own cannabis cultivation, which made up about 10% of their total exports. A farmer could earn 40 times the amount of income that would normally be generated from a legal crop. It was simply a means to keep Mexico under our thumb. And the Mexican government capitulated, burning some crops in the hopes of driving up prices as a deterrent. As prices went up, so did the increase and diversification of smuggling routes and smugglers with more incentive, which is exactly what happened with the prohibition of alcohol.
Right.
Prohibiting and paywalling sought-after goods only cultivates organized crime, corruption, and contempt for the law. Those feelings don't just go away. They're established now.
Yeah, and it's like it just makes everything more. I'm not saying that nothing should be illegal, but I'm just
No.
when you put prohibitions on things that you know people are going to do anyway, it just means that it goes underground and it's riskier for everybody. And it's
Absolutely. Causes way bigger of a problem.
You could try and understand it and try and like regulate it in a responsible way, or try and, give
any
people
of those
options that aren't go to jail so they feel
Right.
like they have to hide and then die. Like, God. Okay.
or ruin
Cool.
people's livelihoods who are growing it.
Right. Yeah.
Like Anslinger, Nixon saw the political advantage of a war on weed. And as before, the American people were primed to be fearful and distrusting. To the everyday, hardworking American of the 60s, everything looked like it was about to fall apart. Fighting in the streets, students rising up and taking over campuses, Black Power radicals, long-haired, freaky people everywhere. All this shoved in their face on the news every day, and Nixon did not waste the feelings of turmoil. He became furious when the prohibition of weed came under fire during a court hearing where the Tax Act of 1937 came into question. The question being, how is it constitutional for someone trying to get a marijuana tax stamp and follow the law, do so without incriminating themselves for doing something illegal, literally going against the Fifth Amendment? And Congress was like, yeah, effectively bringing down marijuana prohibition like a house of cards in one blow. Nixon was like, not on my watch, and in 1970 repealed the Marijuana Tax Act entirely and signed in the Controlled Substances Act. Cannabis, along with any extracts, tinctures, or resins, was made a Schedule I drug, the most restrictive of the 4 schedules, meaning it was to be considered alongside the most dangerous drugs that there are, because cannabis should definitely be put in the same category as cocaine and meth. Nixon's disdain for weed was transferred equally to those he saw as part of the problem, or anyone who stood in his way. Any aspect of counterculture he saw as radical. It was the protesters who were the problem, then the Jews, then Black people. The cannabis leaf had turned into a symbol of all that threatened the good old American way of life. It became an umbrella under which they could lump all of the social unrest and upheaval. The civil rights and anti-war movements, the free speech movement, the hippies, the beatniks, anything counterculture and anti-establishment, weed was just used as a tool to denounce them all. Another quote from Martin Lee's book says this perfectly for me. It supposedly wasn't a crime to think differently in the United States, but possessing an illicit substance was ground for immediate arrest. Official disapproval of marijuana had less to do with what the weed actually did than with what it seemed to represent. Disrespect, bad manners, licentious sex, a lack of patriotism, laziness, permissiveness in general. But they were all getting high. Young people everywhere, and white too.
This is what this smacks of to me. Nixon is someone who never got invited to smoke weed. He was never cool enough for anyone to be like, hey, Dick, you want some? He was just like, why won't they let me smoke any of the marijuana? That's my
a great impersonation.
Isn't Dick cool?
I wish y'all had seen that. You go to YouTube and fucking watch that. If she keeps that in, that was amazing.
You're not, Dick. You're not cool.
You're
and
not.
That's why no one
You're
wants to smoke weed with you. You suck.
You suck so hard. Cannabis use became so rampant that law enforcement just couldn't keep up. So the very same act that classified cannabis as a Schedule I, the Controlled Substance Act, formed a National Commission on Marijuana and Drug Abuse, meant to evaluate the possible harms of using cannabis in order to inform future policy recommendations. What became known as the Schaefer Commission, despite being comprised of members mostly handpicked by Nixon himself, took the assignment very seriously. And I so wish we still had a semblance of that. Like they were Nixon's guys, but they were like, we're going to do the research.
Right.
The commission's final report, titled Marijuana, A Signal of Misunderstanding, was released, in 1972, and it was not what Nixon expected or hoped. The report, 1,184 pages in length, was, to quote Martin Lee, the most comprehensive review of cannabis ever conducted by the federal government. It estimated that around 24 million Americans had tried marijuana at least once, and that they were no different from any of their peers who hadn't. The only difference was that they'd smoked weed once. The commission's answer to the question of why cannabis had become such a problem was many see the drug as fostering a counterculture, which conflicts with the basic moral precepts as well as with the operating functions of our society. And that, quote, it had become a symbol of the rejection of cherished values. The commission found that marijuana was not harmful. It concluded that its continued prohibition was a waste of resources, time, and law enforcement efforts, that it caused selective enforcement and selective prosecution, and that barging into people's homes and invading their personal lives to catch them with something essentially harmless was bordering on unconstitutional.
Wow.
Yeah. The commission told Nixon to his face that the problem was not the drug, but the war on drugs.
I would have loved to be a fly on the wall when you got that news.
It even outlined policy changes that were less stringent and recommended that cannabis should probably be researched for medical use. Nixon rejected all recommendations outright without even reading the full report. While Nixon didn't get to finish his war, Reagan later arrived to pick it right back up. Reagan's war was also no tolerance, but even fiercer. He also refused to read or listen to new and compelling evidence and extensive reports insisting that marijuana didn't pose a threat. His war was well-funded, and it completely changed the criminal justice system. Under his presidency, all law enforcement jobs increased by 36%, and prison-related jobs by 86%. Any little thing could get you thrown in prison, and he was even getting the armed forces involved. Cast as a threat to national security, drug importation became the impetus for Reagan's drug war becoming a real war, militarized and everything. He slashed social programs to fund this war and turned regular police against civilians, training them to hate and fear drug users to an extent that they really hadn't before. Drug arrests and seizure of property became much easier and more commonplace. A ruling by the Supreme Court in 1984 basically gave law enforcement carte blanche to search private property for marijuana without warrant. And then the DARE program, the Drug Abuse Resistance Education Program, was conceived at around the same time. Backed by tax-exempt funding from Big Pharma and Big Tobacco and Big Alcohol, the program was dreamt up by Daryl Gates, a Los Angeles police chief who fervently and publicly asserted that people who use drugs were guilty of treason and that they should be taken out and shot.
Yeah, you'll remember Daryl's name from our Olympics episode. Good old Operation Hammer.
Cowabunga.
Yeah, and the bonus episode about Rodney King as well.
Yeah.
So that was in his era. Real son of a bitch. He's on the list.
He's on the list
Daryl.
for sure.
Yeah.
Fucking Daryl. The program did not focus on either of the two most dangerous substances threatening the youth, tobacco and alcohol. In fact, it directed them towards both. The adages we remember so well, this is your brain on drugs and marijuana is the gateway drug, largely fell on deaf ears. The DARE program was laughed off. People my age and older wear the shirts as a cheeky joke. And why would young people listen? First, it was a drug that made you a violent killer. Then it was the drug that made you the lazy and useless person. Now, if you try it, you'll definitely start using heroin immediately. You know, they put the fear of God in you, which they did for a lot of kids, but a lot didn't. Once they found out that the weed makes you snacky and have more fun at the movies, those other scary drugs don't seem so scary either. It naturally became a gateway drug through self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right. Because they're like, well, they're probably lying about all the other ones then, too. Like, oh, Jesus. Wow. I never even thought about that.
I hadn't thought about it that way until I read what I did. Federal regulations and socialist stigmatization of cannabis use over the decades caused heartbreaking setbacks on the study of medical cannabis. Research that could have eased the lives of so many. Cannabis has been used to successfully treat glaucoma. It can ease the suffering of cancer patients going through chemo. Where other antiemetics fail, cannabis is often the only thing that can touch the agonizing bouts of nausea, vomiting, and inappetence. It was the only thing that helped my stepmother. It was literally the only thing that even touched it. And I literally cannot imagine being forced to choose between getting her the only medicine that helped her or facing imprisonment for getting it and watching her suffer. I would obviously choose imprisonment, but that simply isn't a chance many families can take or choose to make or should have to make. And this was the case for so many before restrictions on medical marijuana use began to ease up. In the 80s, the AIDS crisis saw thousands suffering and dying each year. San Francisco hospitals were full to the brim. And in one of these hospitals, a sweet, unassuming lady in her 50s walked the halls handing out weed brownies to suffering patients. And I'm not going to cry. Her name was Mary Jane Rathbun. She came to be known fondly as Brownie Mary. And don't worry, she's getting her own episode. I can't. Mary Jane. Anyway.
Mary Jane.
Mary Jane.
Was that... I assume that's where it came from, but no, she just happened to be named Mary Jane?
I mean, I think we started calling it Mary Jane, but like marijuana also has been
MJ
contextualized. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's so complicated because it's been
But
so secretive.
She's named Mary Jane.
Mary Jane. Either way, she was already selling her special brownies as a side hustle when she realized it was helping her friends with their pain and nausea. So she started making regular rounds at the local AIDS wards. She was arrested for the first time at 57, found with 18 pounds of cannabis in her public housing apartment. In a statement to the press in 1993, she said, "I didn't go into this thinking I would be a hero. It was something I wanted to do to help my gay friends." But she didn't have to get fucking arrested for handing out brownies that helped fucking AIDS patients suffering
seriously
and starving. It was only in 1976 that the first person was legally allowed to use cannabis medicinally. And it wasn't until 1983 that states started to pass bills that supported medical marijuana use. But only 34 states, and it was still federally illegal. And the federal government still wouldn't provide the weed for the necessary research, making the point moot because you still have to get it illegally. It wasn't made officially legal for medicinal use for those with chronic illnesses until 1996 in California with the Compassionate Use Act. Even now, only 29 states and the U.S. territories of Guam and Puerto Rico allow the use of cannabis for limited medical purposes. Washington and Colorado were the first to make its recreational use legal in 2012, and in 2019, 11 more states followed suit. But it still remains federally illegal. Per the ACLU, 52% of all drug arrests in 2010 were for weed. Between 2001 and 2010, that meant that over 8 million Americans were arrested for pot-related crimes. And the arrest rates for weed remain demographically skewed. While whites use weed as much, if not more, than black people, they are 4 times more likely to be arrested for it. Black people are. Also in 2010, in DC, Iowa, Minnesota, and Illinois, it was found that blacks were 7.5 to 8.5% more likely to be arrested for possessing weed. And an arrest like this for something so innocuous can entirely ruin your life. And I almost feel like that should be an episode for Kate to talk to you guys about because that's her wheelhouse. But like the stigma, it's on your record, the amount of money, your life could fall apart. You could not get jobs down the line because of this. Like for something so simple and stupid.
Yeah. I mean, even an arrest, even if it's just for a weekend, that can, if you have kids, if you have a job, if you they can throw your entire life off if you were unable to be, or even if they drop the charges. Like if you're arrested on a Friday and you're not arraigned until a Monday or a Tuesday and you're gone for 4 days and you don't have any, there's so much that can fall apart for you in that period of time. You don't show up to your job, you could lose your job. And what do you say to them when you get out? Do you lie? Do you say you had a family emergency? I don't know. Anytime I hear anyone be like, well, they were just arrested and let go, it's just like, that's not how that works. And it can be, you can have extremely traumatizing experiences in jail in that amount of time. It's should not be our default thing to do to people for minor shit.
Absolutely not. And I don't know if it was an influencer or a performer or a friend who said this to me, but now that weed shops are looking like Apple stores, I think a lot of people need to be taken out of prison.
Yeah.
Honestly.
And a lot of people have been, thankfully.
Yes, that's very true.
A lot of states have enacted stuff, and there have been, and federally there have been changes, but it's still, because the destabilization you can get from one arrest can then spiral into other crimes too.
Yes.
If you're
Absolutely.
destabilized, you lose your job and then you steal something because you're starving or because your family needs something or you drive a car with a license without a license. There's just so many cascading things that can happen
Exactly.
from that can lead to other issues and lead to you being in prison more and
It's intolerable. And not only is it affecting lives with, financially, it's the ACLU states that we waste more than 3 billion a year enforcing
yeah,
cannabis
we're
laws,
paying
which
for it.
literally paying for it. In conclusion,
Yes.
weed has been controversial since we started using it. As political and social changes took hold in China, namely with the rise of Taoism, cannabis use became frowned upon. Muslim societies have had mixed beliefs surrounding the use of hashish, despite it being widely used for centuries. Differing opinions regarding interpretations of the Quran and religious beliefs about the use of intoxicants have made things pretty complex. Pope Innocent VIII banned its use in 1484 because he was scared of witches. Pagans were using it and planting it and growing it, and naturally they were all put to death.
Scared of witches.
He was. And that's why they thought witches rode around on broomsticks, because they put drugs on wooden dildos and took them in their vaginas. And yeah.
Sounds rad to me.
Right? And that's why they're so mad at them. And that's they fly around because they're different
high.
elevated. Yeah, they're high and flying around. So don't want women having a fun time with wooden dildos with drugs on them. So they were like, no,
or
they're
a fun
witches.
time for with anything
any
at
reason.
all.
For
But
any
especially
reason.
not that.
Especially not that. That's so not Christ-like. Colonial empires were never a huge fan of cannabis because militaries are pretty important for what they were about, and cannabis appeared as a threat to keeping order. They were also concerned about labor forces using it because it could potentially make them less efficient. This is probably why the Spanish stopped farming it in Mexico and why it started to grow wild. Not only have we been using weed for centuries, those at the top of the social hierarchy, the ruling class of any given society, have used weed as a means of control, denigration, a tool of divisiveness, segregation, and alienation. It has been used as a clarifier of us versus them and a way to exploit fear and hatred of the other, despite how fun and potentially good it can be for you.
Wow. That's depressing.
Yeah.
That is the origins from Mexico here. I somehow had no idea about that. That's really interesting.
I didn't have any clue.
Because I was like, I knew the founding fathers harvested hemp and stuff, but in my mind, I was like, oh yeah, that's when it happened. Like they were probably smoking it too, and whatever. But that, wow.
And I was gonna go into the way that we're using it now. I don't find anything really ruinous about how it's being used today, other than the fact that when we were smoking it in the 60s and the 70s, and that started picking up, joints were about 5% THC.
Yeah. Like nothing.
Right. Now you can barely get anything lower than 20%. I don't think you can get much lower than 20% in a dispensary, even a joint, right?
Oh, no, you can get definitely in the teens.
Right. But still, it's
but yeah,
a huge swing. And we're intaking so much more in each product that we're using. Cannabis use disorder has become a thing, but it's mostly to do with isolating and losing touch with your social peers and things like that. 1 in 15 adults in America struggle from cannabis use disorder now. The original use of weed is kind of like a counterculture get together. You're coming together, you're sharing ideas, you're singing, you're making music, you're instigating social change, you're learning how to heal your body. Because we're so individualistic and isolated now as a culture, it feels like we're smoking more and more and more. It's higher content THC. It's aimed to get you somewhere as fast as possible. And you're doing it more and more increasingly alone. We also don't know what these elevated, amounts of THC are doing to their poor little teenage brains that they're taking so much into.
Well, not even teenage brains, but apparently my gynecologist told me that there was some new study fairly recently that it was regular users have, I think it was they were almost twice as likely to have heart attacks.
Wow.
And it was not just smoking, it's edibles, whatever. And I don't know, They were looking at daily, but I was like, how much per day are those
Right,
people
right,
using?
right.
But it is dramatic, like the risk. So just be aware of that too. And obviously we both have used it, still sometimes do. So we're not saying don't, but
Yeah, not at all.
but that point you just made is really interesting about like the isolation. Like I'm sure COVID didn't help that
No.
for one thing, but also the legalization means you don't have to be social with someone to get it, right? Yeah, it used to be that like I have some, let's smoke it together.
Yeah,
Now it's like, well, any of us can get it anywhere. So like there's no incentive for that.
absolutely. And like the video I watched about it that had articles it cited was like, you're too old. If you're in your 30s and you're smoking weed daily as a consistent ritual of like, you wake up, you smoke, you eat your dinner, you smoke, like you're smoking weed to that point, you're going to be losing friend groups. People are going to be moving on and starting their careers and families, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, wow, they're being really harsh about this. This doesn't seem fair. But I mean, I think we all know one or two friends who are like, that's their ritual. They smoke that. They actually smoke that
Like
much.
all day.
All day.
Because I was like, I know plenty of people with kids who are like
Oh,
drinking a THC drink before bed or whatever.
For
but
sure.
that makes more sense. Yeah, like
Yeah.
that it's your whole lifestyle all day. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
it's
and
a
you
little
start-
less sustainable when you
Way
have
less-
more
yes.
responsibilities. Yeah.
yeah. You start moving away from hobbies that you normally would have, engaged in and seeing your friends as much. And what it warned and recommended is like, hey, if you're worried that you might have some sort of cannabis use disorder, stop today, not tomorrow. Like stop today and see how you do. And if you
Yeah.
can't, like you give yourself a number of days, like I'll smoke in 5 days. And if you can't make it that 5 days, then maybe you're going to need to consider some.
Ooh. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I take breaks periodically.
Yeah.
That I don't use it like that. I don't
No.
but some weekends I'll wake and bake, but not usually.
But why not?
But it does help me like write. It does make me feel
Yeah.
creative sometimes. It helps me have ideas. Generally, its effect on me is positive and like productive. Usually I'm like more willing to do chores because I'm just like I'm in a flow, I'm in a zone, and I'm just like, oh yeah, I'll do laundry, I'll sort whatever, I'll like do the dishes, I'll cook. Like I'm more kind of willing to do stuff because
You
I'm
would.
not. Yeah, sorry. That's just fortunate that that's how it affects me a lot of the
Yeah,
time, I think.
that's nice. Anyway,
Well, that was very interesting. I'm like we could do a whole other. We could have a 420 series. We could have a tradition
I think we
too.
could.
Because
we could do a whole episode about medical marijuana. We could do a whole episode about how it's been restricted in other parts of the world, just like you said. You guys, I had 2 books open at the same time. I bought a book for this. I'm going to finish the book. You guys should read it. It's great. We could have a whole podcast about this. Like it's so big.
someone probably does.
But I'm sure somebody does. Like I couldn't even get into the cartel. I couldn't even like
Yeah.
like just the fact that Nixon probably poked the bear there.
Right. And I like this route better because getting into cartel and stuff feels a little more like let's be scared of weed, which is
Yeah, which
which isn't
not.
what we would make clear that that's not what it is. But like
Yeah.
that does feel a little more like fear mongering of
Ooh,
like,
yeah,
ooh, look how
yeah.
scary it is because the cartels are running it. But
Frankenstein the monster would frankly just die.
thank you so much. I'm gonna go smoke a joint and think about all
You
this.
should. And I'm going to have an edible and I'm going to lay down. Kate can eat an edible and do chores. I can eat an edible and turn into a fish.
Thank you all, as ever, for listening. Please spread the word and tell your friends and your enemies. And please do follow us, Instagram, YouTube. Please go to Patreon. I know there are so many more important things to be throwing your money at, and please go throw it at those things first. But if you're throwing your money at other important things and you have $5 a month to spare, come sign up for our, or $3, come sign up for our Patreon. Or if you don't have money to spare, just go follow us over there. And we will see you next time where for something I will do. And
Wherefore something Kate shall do.
wherefore something I shall do. And then after that, we got another guest.
Woohoo!
Oh, we also will have a bonus episode coming out this month about April Fools and some fun and not so fun things around
I'm excited
that.
for this.
Happy 420. Love you all.
Bye, dummies.